Hey everyone. So I guess the place to start with this chapter is Harald and how a lot of what initially created the perception of him being the Mad King that went crazy was his own grief, his internalized belief that he was nothing but a failure to his people, solely predicated on his unwillingness to kill rocks, that his own inaction, that his own unwillingness and inability to kill his best friend is what doomed the giants to live in isolation from the world, forever to be viewed as brutal warmongers. Of course, as we know, that couldn't be further from the truth, as the present shows, with the giants of Elbaf actively taking up Harald's cause to push for peace with the rest of the world. Yet, it is still interesting to see how far Harald's internalized failure and desperation for peace is what caused his downfall, as what was recounted by the people of Elbaf themselves. Harald tore off his horns as a declaration of peace, but what wasn't mentioned was the circumstances by which he did it, as he did it in front of the gate of the World Government Marineford, where Emu was watching. The interesting thing about this to me is Harald's downfall in a lot of ways can be described as how noble intentions of a man can drive us to absolute madness. Like, Harald's desperation to secure his future as people, ironically, is what drove him right into the arms of the world government and Emu, where we pretty much all know where the rest of the story is headed from here. Emu himself explicitly expressed a desire in order to enslave Harald in order to make sure that the citizens of Elbaf were basically subjected to absolute enslavement and serve the world government as warriors. That's all they want the giants for. And it's interesting how that desire for peace is what drove them is what drove the giant is what Harald is what drove the giants right into the hands of the world government for this, at least at the time. In saying that, this chapter did cover a lot of interesting turning points that happened in the aftermath of God Valley, but one I do want to talk about is the fallout between Garp and Dragon, because it didn't turn into as much of a blow-up as I thought it did. More so just a silent mutual understanding between father and son of how the events of God Valley had done a lot to change them in order to and change their view of the world, and just how they believed in vastly different approaches of how to change it. Like Garp would obviously continue to work within the system to try to change things, whereas Dragon would go on to take the more direct approach with the Revolutionary Army. And it is interesting how, despite cutting ties, this one moment really does show how they are, in a lot of ways, silent supporters of each other's actions. And more than anything, this whole incident, I think, really says a lot about Garp's intent behind wanting to make a Luffy a Marine, that it was much more about trying to protect him from the same fate as Rocks, but also the larger threat from within the government and Navy itself, that of course being Emu. And it's like, it is interesting to see that the levels and layers but by which Garp did have genuine intentions of trying to protect Luffy from all that. Now, on a somewhat lighter note, though, I do love how this chapter also expands upon Garp's relationship with Sengoku, and while this chapter doesn't show anything we didn't already know, I do like how it does show that they have been each other's ride or die, watching each other's back since the very beginning, and how even they took on their own personal responsibilities as part of the Navy in order to support the other in any way they could. And I like how there is a very intertwining complexity of these relationships, but even more so, this actually does provide a lot of interesting context when looking at Sengoku and his retirement. That who we saw in this flashback is who Sengoku's always been. He's just had to hide it for the sake of professionalism, yet we've still seen it come out whenever he's around Garp. And it is interesting to see how this relationship in itself is kind of always, has never really changed all that much. It's just been hidden under that cloak of professionalism, and that these men do in fact have a genuine amount of amount of mutual respect for each other, and they do want to support each other's actions in any way they can. And in some, I'm gonna say it too. Someone said it too. I think this also does kind of going back to like who this is, who Sengoku has always been in his retirement. I wouldn't be surprised if when Sengoku found out that Garp had gone to full elite in order to in order to rescue Kobe at that time. It almost makes me wonder if Garp was more mad at if Sengoku was more mad at the time that Garp didn't take him along with him, rather than him being mad that he did it at all. Like again, with Sengoku in his retirement being more of the man we basically saw in this flashback, it's like, yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if Sengoku in his retirement just kind of wants to cause a little chaos himself alongside Garp now. um, with that said, I do want to dedicate a special part of this review to Rox's final moments in this chapter, because credit where it's due, man knew he was screwed. Like, the moment he laid eyes on the God Knights walking towards him, he knew that it was truly the end for him, and his final words, I like how his final words were a hope that Garp and Roger made it alive, and a thank you to the men who set him, to them as men who set him free. Like, it's a classic case of Rox may have died, but he died a free man, not a puppet controlled by the government. And I think he took solace in that singular fact that he could die knowing he was the man who he remained the man he always was. A man who just wanted to be free. A man who despite being cursed by basically by the Prince legacy of the Davy clan, he took strides in the fact that he was a man who basically who loved and appreciated, like, pretty much those who loved and appreciated those around him, whether they were his family, his friends, those considered family, friends, or even rivals. Like, he's someone who led a full life, and I think he died happy knowing that he embraced that basically full life. And in a certain respect, I almost wonder if Roger kind of took a little bit of inspiration from basically Rox in his final moments as well, where he tried to live the best life he could just like pretty much Rox had, and when it came time for him to die, he decided to die on his own terms, rather than die in the way that the government would have expected him to die. Like, and I think that is also a way as to why I think in a way it does inform as to why Roger even started the pirate era to begin with, because he knew that the legacy of those who want to be free, it needed to continue on in a lot of ways. Whether it was Rox himself or whatever, like, freedom needed to continue. The will to be free, the will to act on your own needed to always be there. And now, having said that, we also finally see the other big turning point of the Roger pirates discovering baby Shanks inside the treasure chest, which it is funny looking back on just this moment now, that if it wasn't for that one mistake, the world would have probably ended up in a much different in regards to the role Shanks plays at, potentially. Or he may have Shanks may have eventually went rogue again, but it is interesting to see how much things did pretty much start with, this whole story did start with Shanks. It technically started with Luffy, but a lot of what the world is today, it all did start with Shanks' birth in a lot of respects. And now, admittedly, if I did have one critique with this chapter, is that I am starting to kind of realize that I think we will see I think we will see Luffy's birth in this even before this. I do get the feeling we are going to see Luffy's birth before this flashback ends. But I think the way Oda's playing this right now is that we're not going to see Luffy's birth until the pretty much tail end of this whole flashback, and just seeing who Luffy's mother is. Like, we're probably, like, it's one of those annoying little things where I think looking at how many chapters there are left in the year, I think I know how Oda's playing this, and it's a little bit dirty, a little bit cheap, but it does make sense that he would probably save, like, the point in time where Luffy was born, from the basically tail end of the of the year, probably. I think that's how he's gonna play it. So we won't get official confirmation on who Luffy's mother is until basically near the end of the year, to be sure. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe from my Blue Sky, Analyst Crunchyroll. Be sure to notification bell, subscribe button, and just everyone, guys. Dark Knight of Night signing off. Later, everyone.